That's kind of my style. I'm not the type to sugarcoat anything, but
She called him and said, "Hey, I've got fucking cancer."
yeah, basically, yeah.
I carry on like I carry my pack, even if I don't come back.
Hey there, Warriors. I'm Derek Porter. I'm the CEO of Dynamic Warriors. We are a veteran-based lifestyle brand that pushes health and wellness products. And this is the first of our many, many, many podcasts. I, fortunately for you, will not be your host. By popular demand, I have been told that I'm not going to be the best for this job. Maybe it's because of my flat voice. Maybe it's because of my flat personality. I'm not sure. But I'll say this, I'm relieved that we have somebody aboard that is willing to give this a shot. And so you know, right away, before I start the introductions, this podcast will be obviously oriented towards our brand. However, we will be interviewing Dynamic Warriors, which I will get into in a moment, CEOs, combat veterans, cancer survivors, entrepreneurs, amputees, cannabis advocates and pioneers, single parents, power parents, and all around people who have braved conflict, otherwise known as Dynamic Warriors. And before I get into the definition of dynamic and warrior, I want to introduce our walking, talking, rock star, soon to be, after I pass the torch, host, Myndi.
Don't mess it up.
Minard.
Yes.
Beautiful. I got it.
You got it right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. We appreciate you. Kevin is very nervous. He's wrangling around in the background. He was nervous farting earlier.
That's the worst.
It is the worst. And before we kick things off, because I'm going to interview our soon-to-be host, before we relay moving forward here, I'm going to define. Can you tell that I'm nervous? We're not always gonna drink on set here. Cheers. To you. But we decided, because it's a special occasion, to take the edge off. Fuck it, we're gonna drink this time around. So,
That's right.
Dynamic Warriors. The word dynamic, at the end of the day, when you look it up in the dictionary, as I hope you're doing right now when you watch this 6 to 8 weeks from actual air date, is actually characterized by constant change, the ability to adapt and overcome. That's really the most important definition of dynamic, the ability to adapt and overcome. The word warrior also has multiple definitions. However, at the end of the day, it is someone who has braved or is currently braving conflict. Many people have said to us that warriors, true warriors in the sense, by definition, are, combat veterans. We hear that all the time, right, Kevin? Which is complete bullshit. It truly is bullshit. Warriors walk amongst us everywhere. And they are, just as I had mentioned, they're, the cancer survivors, they're the amputees, or the CEOs, or the entrepreneurs. They're people who are currently braving conflict. My 17-month-old daughter is a dynamic warrior who was born 10 weeks premature, and she fought her way into the world and fought her way into being more developed, even though she came out of the wound right away underdeveloped. So this is a podcast that is telling those stories, Dynamic Warriors telling their stories. And we will have Minard interviewing those individuals. Now, Myndi, how long have we known each other?
3.5 years.
Has it been 3.5 years?
Yeah. Well, that's how long I've known your wife.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you and I have.
Which my first wife?
Yeah, the one that you claim, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
What was your first impression of me when you met me?
Oh, that's a really good question.
A little nervous.
I thought you were pretty rough.
Around the edges?
All over, not just the edges. Inside, outside.
Too serious?
Serious, very quiet.
It's another reason that I'm not going to be your host.
The total opposite of your wife, for sure.
Yeah. Isn't that weird how that shit works?
Opposites attract, I hear.
Yeah.
Hasn't worked for me yet.
Wait.
Well.
Okay. What do you do for a living right now?
I am in the mortgage lending on the residential side. I'm a licensed loan officer, but right now I work as a loan officer assistant. So I kind of do all of the initial contact with people that are interested in buying a home, all the way through to, pushing them through into our processing, and then somebody else on our team takes it over. So.
Okay. And you're a dynamic warrior. The reason we feel that we know you're a dynamic warrior is because, well, multiple reasons, but one of which we're going to get into your story here, is you're a cancer survivor.
Yep, breast cancer.
Breast cancer. When were you diagnosed with breast cancer?
March 28th, 2019.
Very recent, and
Yep.
you've been through a lot of hell. Let me just stop being so fucking formal here for a minute
Right.
and just
Yeah.
relax. You've been through a lot of shit, been through a lot of hell. When it was official and you were diagnosed, what was your reaction?
When I got the phone call, I was at work, which I wasn't expecting. I had many phone calls about this in the past as somebody that has dealt with lumps throughout my entire life. So when they called me at work, I was not at all expecting to hear what I did. And when I did, I just I listened and I processed, or what I thought was processing, but I really kind of just shut it off and didn't really hear much.
Right.
I knew immediately then I needed to contact my family and let them know, which I did without any couth. I called them directly and just said, hey, I just want you to know I have cancer. And anybody that knows me knows that that's kind of my style. I'm not the type to sugarcoat anything, but
She called him and said, hey, I've got fucking cancer.
yeah, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
because I just had to tell somebody.
Sure.
I had to get it off my chest, and here I was in this work setting of people that they're close to you, but they're not necessarily people that you confide in and trust with this kind of information. So
Right.
to have that bomb dropped on you at work was definitely kind of mind-blowing for sure.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
And you still powered through the rest of the day. And
No, my best friend came and picked me up from work, and I left for sure.
when was there a moment of meltdown, like a moment where you were shattered?
Honestly, the meltdown stage came after everything.
Okay.
I don't know where I had this internal strength that came from. I was never, I cried when I told my family, but I was never in this place where I was super shattered by the news. It was like, no, this can't be right. It's, and so I feel like when the breakdowns came was after everything was so final, after all my surgeries, and after trying to find the new normal. That's when the meltdowns and kind of the emotions came into play.
Surgeries.
Yes.
So when you were told you had cancer, this was aggressive, right? This was an aggressive.
So the form of cancer that I have is invasive ductal carcinoma, and I at that point I didn't know how aggressive it was. I knew that they had told me all these things. Oh, you have stages and you have grades, but as she was explaining those, obviously I didn't know until further. So I was very fortunate that I had grade 1, which is the slowest growing cancer.
Okay.
I didn't know at that point if it had gone into my lymph nodes. I didn't know if it was just in ductal. And so it was a lot of waiting. And so that was kind of the hard part is not knowing. So at that point, as far as on a scale of aggressive, I was stage 1, 2. And so I was just borderline at stage 2, 18%, 20% start stage 2. So I was fortunate and caught it very early.
Okay.
Yes.
Fortunate and caught it very early, but yet you had a major procedure.
Yes. That I never, ever had second thoughts about. The moment I was diagnosed, I said, I met with my doctors and I said, I want a bilateral mastectomy. And she said, I feel like that's a little bit aggressive. I feel like you kind of need to take a step back and wait until we get genetic testing and until we, have more information. And, but for me, I don't know where that choice came from, but it was never a choice of having a lumpectomy versus having them completely take everything. I was very, very solid in my choice.
So there was something just internally that told you this needs to happen in order to save your life.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a Libra, so I don't make decisions well. I can't decide where to eat. I can't decide where I want to go out. But this, just the moment it happened, I never faltered. That was my choice, and that was.
And the doctor, the surgeons, they didn't try to counter argue with you, saying
So-
like, go ahead.
I apologize. So they did. My doctor tried to convince me, like I said. She said, "You're being a little bit aggressive. Let's take a step back." And she said, "You know, you have many options. We can do a lumpectomy. We can do all these other things." However, I knew that with those other choices came other treatments.
Sure.
And, you know, you just choose to do a lumpectomy because you want to keep this part of you.
Yep.
So you choose to do the minor. But then at the end of the day, a lot of that turns into many, many months of radiation or the likelihood of chemotherapy. And for me, I just wanted the cancer out of my body. I just wanted it gone. And so they did. My surgeon definitely tried to reel me in a little bit and say, take a step back. And I did. I left all options on the table up until the moment that I had genetic testing. And when my genetic testing came back, I thought for sure I had the BRCA gene. My grandmother and my great-grandmother, both breast cancer survivors. So I just knew. I knew I had this gene until genetic testing came back and I didn't, in fact, have the gene. I had another genetic mutation that has just recently been tied to breast cancer. At what point, when my surgeons found out, she called me back and said, "I'm so grateful that you've already mentally prepared yourself for a bilateral mastectomy because at this point we don't feel you have any other option." So,
Holy shit. Okay.
yeah,
So you lost both of your breasts.
I did.
Yeah.
Proudly. I wanted them gone. Yeah.
Did any other members of your family needed to be tested?
So because if somebody in your family tests positive for cancer, they will do genetic testing for your entire family for free. So every single person, my sister and my parents got tested.
Okay.
My sister is positive for the gene as well. We got that gene from our dad's side, which is where the breast cancer is on my grandmother, my great-grandmother. So.
Okay. Okay. Diagnosed in March.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a year ago.
Nope. It's right around the corner.
Procedure.
Procedure was June 10th.
June 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Preparation for the procedure, mental preparation, or was it just let's do this?
I was so ready. It's just because of my age, you know, I was still very, very young at 39 to be diagnosed with this, which to me, I feel like it's such a common disease these days. I know so many people that have had this happen in their lives where it was
Cancer in general.
Right. Yeah. And so when my doctors and my genetic counselors and everybody kept referring to me as being in the rare age group, I thought that was, you know, so crazy. But it wasn't a lot of mental preparation because I was so busy with doctor's appointments. There's so much that leads up to it. And obviously, I was a candidate for direct reconstruction. And so with that, I had to have cardiology. I had to have tons of EKGs to make sure that my body could withstand this 8.5-hour surgery that they were expecting it was going to be. And so I was so consumed. My time was so consumed with doctors that I didn't have any time to really mentally prepare. Like I said, I just wanted the cancer gone. I just wanted it out of my body.
And a lot of women, when they go through this procedure, they do not have, I don't even know how to say it, cosmetic implants. Mm-hmm. But that was something that you wanted to do immediately. So they did this and they killed two birds with one stone, and you decided to have implants.
Yes. And I feel like a majority of the population doesn't have reconstruction right away because I don't feel like they know all of their options.
Right.
There are so many forums that I've gone on and people that I've spoken to that have had just a single mastectomy because they were so afraid of losing both because they didn't know their options. And I was just so fortunate to have doctors that were young and not into this old school medicine and this, you know, this kind
thinkers.
of right. And so I was so fortunate that I was able to know all of my options up front. Okay. And I was an even better candidate for direct reconstruction because I had previously had a breast augmentation. So I already had these pockets that a lot of these women don't have and have to get these horrible expanders that are extremely painful. And for me, at my age, being single and being 39, I wasn't going to let this diagnosis ruin my life or change it to the point of me looking significantly different.
Right.
So I just researched and found the best doctors and was able to have direct reconstruction the same day.
How did, prior to surgery, how did people react around you? How did the behavior with your family change toward you? How did behavior with your friends change towards you? How was the environment suddenly around you? Especially, and then how did you react to them knowing that there was, even though you had caught everything early and there was this battle plan laid out, knowing that there was a chance of mortality at the end of the day?
So I have the best support system. My friends, I mean, yourself and Gina included. You definitely find out who your friends are. I have the best family. It brought my sister and I extremely close, which I've wanted my entire life. And it's kind of crazy that it's not, right? Something like this brings people close. When you have the fear of death or anything like that, it makes you kind of progress and want to have these relationships. But it's very invasive. And I think that's why I struggled so much afterwards, is that when I was going through it, I had such a support system that I didn't get to grieve myself.
Sure.
I didn't get to really grasp the severity of my situation because you spend this time trying to make the people around you feel okay. And I was never fake. I never was, I'm having a great day when my days were bad. I never experienced those bad days until after everything stopped.
Okay.
It was, everything just shut off, after surgery and after checkups and after recovery and after physical therapy. Yeah. It's like, now what?
Post-op, you have the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, tell me, let's call it the day before. What was going through your head? How did you feel? Where did you stay? Who were you with the day prior?
I was excited. I stayed with my parents at their house.
You were excited to just like be done
I
with
was.
it. Like,
I
let's
was
get this
ready.
over with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I was so excited to see my doctors because I was so proud, and that the morning of my surgery, I wasn't nervous until my surgeon came in and started talking to me. And that was the first time I actually had tears. And she had to look me in the face and say, "It's okay. This is a real thing. Like, it's okay for you to show emotion," because I had been so strong through the whole thing that at that point it was like, this is it.
Yeah.
And you never know. They tell you you're going in for this 8.5-hour surgery. And at that point, I didn't know if I was going to come out with breasts or not. They kind of have to go in there and see how your skin is. A lot of people don't talk about this, but I was very, very set that I wanted to keep my own nipples. A lot of people don't know that. They have to have tattooed. And, she said, if that's your thing, we need to make sure that your skin has good blood flow, and we need to make sure. So you may wake up and have nothing. You may wake up and have implants and no nipples. So that's where I think I was a little bit more nervous, where I didn't know what I was waking up to. I just wanted to wake up at that point.
Yeah, and making decisions on, I didn't even know that.
Keeping your nipples was a thing? But I'm thinking too also, and I know we've touched on it a little bit, a woman's breast, that from sex appeal to from reproductive organs, and you're going to lose them. Mm-hmm. What level of shock and from the terror standpoint, or if there was any terror at any point, to
the fact that, what if something happens? I mean, it's surgery at the end of the day. There could always be complications with surgery. There's a chance you may not wake up, so on and so forth. And was there ever a time from we'll just dive right into it. Was there ever a time from a sex appeal standpoint that you think that you thought that there might be challenges with it and how you were going to cope with it?
Yeah. So for me, it wasn't as aesthetically pleasing. I didn't care as much that, I filled out a shirt or anything like that. For
Right.
me, that was like my erogenous zone. That was, and
Okay.
they told me, from the beginning, expect, because we're pulling all the nerves, to not have feeling from your collarbone to your belly button. That's basically the range. You could have you're going to lose all feelings because we pull all nerves. But if you lose it between that area, we just don't know. And so for me, it was more the not feeling anything, and how
So you have no
it's-
sensation.
Well, that's the thing is they would tell me and tell me and tell me. And I was, as I came out of surgery, I was expecting, like, with an augmentation to be bandaged and to have all of these, things where I couldn't see what I had come out to. So, they sent me back to my room, and this is an hour from waking up from surgery. And I looked down my shirt and I don't have any bandages on. I'm like, whoa. And I have nipples. This is amazing. Right.
So we're off to a good start.
Right.
You're live and you have your nipples.
Right.
Okay.
And I have boobs.
Yeah.
Not just flat nipples. So,
Sure.
my sister starts dressing me, and as she's putting my shirt on, I start feeling her. And of course, I start bawling, and I said, keep feeling, because I had all this feeling that I wasn't expecting to. And this is with a nerve block. So you
Right.
expect to not feel anything. And the whole room, we were all bawling. This is actually the first time I've told that story without bawling. I think it was such an emotional moment for my entire family, because you expect for everything to just be gone, and it wasn't. So.
Okay. And post-op. The time has come. We just went through what you had talked about with regards to feeling and so forth. Now the time comes at some point you get, it's interesting because I was actually going to ask about bandages and whatnot, but you said you want bandage. They cut you loose, you go home. Or maybe it didn't even happen just then. At some point you're going to take a shower and you're going to strip down and you're going to look in the mirror. Could you tell me about that first experience?
My gosh. I'm so happy that you asked me, because I took pictures the day after, because when you go to the doctors, they show you before and 6 months. They don't show you 1 day, 3 days, 5 days post-op. Dude, legit, my boobs were like octagons. One was swollen, one was not. I had all this drawing on me. I had drains. They have to put drains coming out of each side. I had 2 on both sides that we would have to empty every couple hours. And so you just look in the mirror and you think, oh dear Lord, what is this? Like, I almost wished I hadn't had reconstruction, because it was very scary. And, 3 days, 5 days, the pictures helped so much. It's almost like a weight loss. You see all this progression, and if you don't have the pictures, you don't realize the difference. But it was so nice to see how it had changed. Not the next day. Oh my gosh, I was like, Mom, what did I do? Oh my gosh, like, should I call the doctor? Is this weird? Do people normally have 8-sided boobs? Because this is not normal at all.
Right.
But in the days and weeks following, I became much more comfortable when swelling went down, and so right after was scary. It was not fun.
Who were besides surgeons, who were the first people you were making fun of? Your sister, your mom?
Yeah, basically everybody that saw me prior to my surgery, because everybody's seen your boobs at that point. Nothing is sacred. So my best friend, and I was actually pretty proud. So, I wasn't afraid for people to see. I was more like, look, this isn't a super scary thing. You don't have to be afraid.
Right.
That. So my best friend, my sister, my mom, my dad would always leave the room, obviously, to give us some privacy. But
Sure.
yeah,
How does your dad feel about it? His little girl going through this?
I think he's very type A and very strong. And he's taught me so much in my life about being strong and just, I feel like he never had a doubt that I would beat this. But I've never seen the side of him that is maybe a little bit more, when I would give them information, I would give it to them from a point where they couldn't be anything but positive.
Sure.
I never let them see me sad or break down. I just, this is what it is. And he would always say, sounds like you have it figured out, and, we're here for whatever you need. And my parents have been so great. My whole family has, but I'm sure it hurts him more than he said, but he knew I would make it through for sure.
Did you ever catch him having a moment where he looked like he was going to lose his shit?
Never.
Get emotional? Really?
I mean,
She's a hard charger.
when the doctors would come in and they would talk to us and things like that, I could see that he was sad that it was happening to me. But for the most part, it was more, being strong for me. I'm sure it was different behind closed doors with my mom.
Yeah.
Because I called my mom out on it a time or two. Like, you just kind of seem so distant and so nonchalant. And she's like, oh, trust me, when I hang up the phone with you, I lose it every time. But, I just don't want you to see that. So I'm sure that it happened, although I didn't see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have as you know, I have a little girl, and when she's had blood drawn, and I mean, gotten her shots and whatnot, I'm not kidding. First I get upset because somebody hurt my kid.
Yeah.
And then I get upset because these are like wails of pain, and it bothers me. When it comes to, from a parenting standpoint, yeah, my wife is definitely the harder one when it comes to, like, she's gonna be fine. I'm like, fuck, all right, like, just let's be careful. Anyways,
I definitely think it would have been different if I was younger.
sure.
But I'm the kid now that bosses them around, so he's probably like, yeah, she's got it.
Just step aside and
Yeah.
let her own this shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've always been pretty independent, and they've allowed me to be that. And so I think they knew that throughout this, I would continue on that. And, I would ask for the support when I needed it, and they would just kind of be there in the wings when I needed them. So,
Okay.
yeah.
You keep going however long you want.
Have you had sex post-op?
Nope. No, I actually, not since a couple months prior to my, a couple months prior to my surgery.
You know that we're going to get inquiries on our contact us page saying, I'll have sex with her. I know there was curiosity there, and I'm sure you've been asked that already.
Yeah, and it's,
You have to be vulnerable in front of somebody, and yeah. So.
Yeah, and for me, it's not even about this surgery, because, quite frankly, I think that they did a phenomenal job. I don't feel like I look any different than I did when I had my first breast augmentation.
Sure.
I think for me, it's that being, 8, 10, 12, 15 weeks out of the gym and just getting to a place where I'm back comfortable with myself physically, from a standpoint all other than my actual breasts. I think that's kind of where, and I haven't felt like I want or have the need to kind of explain myself or make somebody else feel good about my situation or have somebody feel bad for me. Like, I don't like that. I want to be me.
Yeah.
And so it just, when the time is right, that'll happen. But right now it just hasn't happened. So.
And you're you all the time. That was one of the reasons why we we had gone through a list, and when I mean a list, I mean Kevin and I, we went through our friends list and our network and our, like our Facebook friends list and
your
whatnot.
real friends or?
Yeah, real friends, and then acquaintances, and like, okay, people that we could hire. So I'm like, no, it's got to be somebody that we know that's going to resonate. They have their story. They're, again, that walking, talking dynamic warrior. And when I mentioned, so I don't know if Kevin, I know he had met you and his wife had met you. I think it was just one time that they had met, or maybe a couple times. They didn't know you very well. I don't know you super well. I know my
Right.
wife knows you a lot better. But when I had touched on that, because we also needed, it's not a secret, we needed a strong female, quote unquote, brand ambassador, if you will, that again had their own story and was willing to, they had that TV personality, if you will, is a better way to put it. And I thought of you, and I finally blurted out the name, and it resonated with Kevin. He's like, it right away when because I was going to do this all the time, okay? And he said, he's like, I will back you if as your partner in crime here, I will back you 100% if you want to do this. However, and then I'm like, you don't need to however me. I know I'm not the ideal candidate for something like this. So when I touched on your name, yes, there was like absolute, like the eyebrows went up. I talked to Gina, my wife, about it, who obviously knows you much better, and right away, like if she's willing to do it, yeah, like so. Thank you first off, thanks for sharing your story. And I'm like totally turning the volume way the fuck down when I say the thanks there. And even more so, thank you for giving this a shot. I hope that we can make you happy and you'll stick around and interview more warriors. Do you have questions for me?
Well, I mean, you kind of explained, because I know what Dynamic Warriors is about, and kind of this program. That was one of my main questions, because I feel like it's important that viewers know kind of what we're about. And so you kind of took all my questions away on that.
I did, right?
Yeah.
I was almost waiting for her to like hammer me with personal questions.
I mean,
like,
how do you think you would feel if this was, I mean, how would you handle it if this was Gina or Rayla at any point in their lives? How do you think, as a dad, you asked me how my dad would reacted, so
I would react. So I've thought of that as I was figuring out my questions ahead of time yesterday and today before this, and I think I would react exactly the same as all the other traumatic situations that I've been through, and I'll get into one here, but at the end of the day, I keep, probably not unlike your father, I keep my shit together until it's over. We'll get through it. And then if I have to crumble afterwards, like after everyone's safe from the car accident type of a scenario, then I can lose my shit. Later on, when my daughter was going through traumatic experiences when she was born, from being jaundiced to struggling to breathe to, 10 weeks of prematurity, bradycardia episode, sudden drop in heart rate, being on life support initially, I kept it together. My wife went through an emergency C-section. This was completely like, we woke up to a normal Saturday and then we were in a living hell, happy that our baby was alive. And hey, we're parents now, 2.5 months early.
right.
But I realized I needed to keep it together and warrior on through this. I need to be strong, one, for my wife, and now this new person that's in the world, that's my little girl. But there were moments when I knew I call it a lull in the fight, as any combat veteran does. When there's a lull in the fight, you do what you have to do to catch your breath. And I literally only told Gina this. There was a couple times where I would stop, like day 2. Rayla, my daughter, was in the hospital she was in the neonatal intensive care unit for 36 days. And for the first couple of days, I had to stop and take a moment. The first 2 days were actually the most stressful too. And I would go to the restroom. At one point, the first time I had to do this, I asked the security guard, is there a private restroom? You know, it's a hospital, so oftentimes you go in and there's multiple stalls and you're not alone in there. And I just needed a second to be by myself. And the first time I did it, when I asked for a private restroom, I just had to fucking lose it and just really cry hard for a second. For 2 or 3 minutes, and then I would stop. I'd splash some water on my face, and check myself in the mirror, and make sure like it doesn't look like I've been crying, right? Okay, I think
Right.
you're all right, Derek. Let's get back on the fucking battlefield, and so that's what I had to do, and I think I would react the exact same way. Something tells me that all future experiences where there's going to be rough periods, family-wise, that I'll probably behave the same way.
Right. So when you're talking, you're always referring to Rayla as the warrior. Obviously, with this foundation and company, you are a dynamic warrior as well. So a lot of viewers may not know what makes you a dynamic warrior.
See,
So
you're owning it. You're just owning the situation now. So I would say there's a couple of it's a lifestyle. It genuinely is a lifestyle. It's not just a brand. We firmly believe it's a lifestyle, and we live that lifestyle day in and day out. I would say the first experiences where I had to become and learn to become this individual was when I was deployed to war. The fast forward version of that was I have 2 deployments overseas to Iraq. And then a lot of the other hardships that come along with life from there. This is my second time as a CEO, an entrepreneur for 9 years now. So I think I'm able to check a couple of the boxes that dynamic warriors are able to check.
So let me ask you, a lot of times when people talk about PTSD, they only refer that to, say, war, where I feel like as a cancer survivor, I too had, I too dealt with PTSD. And so can you kind of touch on that, on how you dealt with that? Because I feel like from me, I'm not really sure. If you experienced that, I'm not really sure how, at this point in my life, how to kind of deal with that, or if there's a way to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And
I don't know.
I feel like you know more about me than I thought you knew about me. How do you know I have PTSD?
I don't know. I'm saying that I have PTSD. So if you do, in fact, I mean, I can't imagine having 2 tours overseas at war and not, have experienced some level of PTSD.
Yeah. So I've actually, and I think it's pretty public at this point. I wrote a book about it. I've been diagnosed with extreme hypervigilance disorder, which is a form of post-traumatic stress. So I'm, very more, and this is putting it mildly, very on guard and on edge. Now, when I was diagnosed with this, it was 2009. I've been through, quite frankly, people that are looking for an answer to how do you deal,
Right.
how do you deal? I think everyone is very different. I think that your experience, from what I've heard from other cancer survivors, your experience is very different, just as everyone else. And my experience is different dealing with post-traumatic stress. I'm light years ahead of where I was when I was initially diagnosed 11 years ago. And quite frankly, I would say 2 major things that were helpful. One was, like you said, a support system. Family and friends, we're both very fortunate. We're surrounded by family and friends that love us very dearly. And admitting to this now, lots of therapy. I've been through some very aggressive therapy regimens, and I still, they're considered maintenance sessions. I still regularly go. And, sometimes it's a vent session. Sometimes we get into various different things, and it's in waves. I've had like really good whole years where I just haven't had issues with it. And then there's been other times where things have escalated, and I've had some problems, just being more, very aggressively on guard. So remembering surrendering to the fact, almost sounding like, an alcoholic, surrendering to the fact that you have a problem. So
Right.
surrendering to the fact that I have a diagnosed mental illness, and I can either choose to ignore it, or I can choose to do something about it. But it was impairing my life massively, and I needed to do something at the time when I was diagnosed. I was getting my bachelor's degree. I worked in security, of course. I've been working in security for a lot of years. But I was protecting people, and this was becoming a problem. It actually made me good in my job in a lot of ways, but it was also stressing me out to the point where, we're talking like nightmares and having problems going out at night. And I mean, there's some guys that are a mess, some gals too, where they literally can't leave their house. So yeah, above and beyond that, many, many years of dealing with that. And now it makes me a little more on edge, literally, like when I talk about it even now. But yeah, well past that now. But still remembering that I have to take care of myself
Right.
up here.
Right.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mindy, thank you so very much. Genuinely appreciate you telling your story, being vulnerable on camera. And I know we got like really real. I was hoping that we would like laugh or cry or.
We
but
didn't. Oh,
No,
no, we didn't.
we didn't. We
No.
didn't do that. No.
And you keep thanking me, but thank you. This is a really, really cool opportunity. I have, since my diagnosis and my surgery, I've just been saying, I just wish something would fall into my lap or something would come up where I feel like I'm rewarded and where I can share my story and I can meet other people that, have these incredible stories as well. Oh, thank
There
you.
we go. Warrior.
So thank you so much for this opportunity because it's really exciting. I'm super excited.
Thank you. Are you ready to interview other warriors that have these insane, incredible stories like your own?
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Fantastic.
mean, I don't think I'm a warrior, but you do. So
You you are. Yeah, absolutely.
awesome.
All right. Thank you so very much. Thank you. And really quick, thank you to the individuals that inspired us to do this. Thank you to, our family, friends, Stephen, and I have to throw it out there, Jamie. I was on a podcast of yours recently, and that was kind of like the tipping point, as many people had mentioned, to try this out. That was the tipping point to, like, you know what, we're gonna wholeheartedly immerse ourselves into this and tie it to our brand and push that lifestyle and let Dynamic Warriors tell their story. Thank you again, everyone. Until next time, when Mindy will be sitting in this chair and she'll be interviewing the next Dynamic Warrior.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.